Hey, hello. Welcome everyone to the first episode in a long, long time. This is again TJRS, the John Ross Show. Episode number 17. Episode 17. Um, I hope everyone had, first of all, a very good Thanksgiving. I did as well. Spent some time with family and friends. Um, We have a lot to talk about tonight. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. Mainly because of the new variant of coronavirus or COVID 19 that has just developed, the Omicron, as it is known, in several countries of South Africa and also found to be positive in in Australia. And also wanting to do a viewership and occasional, hopefully, commentary of the recent This Is Revolution with Jason Miles, Pascal Robert, and their guest, Mr. Sam Seder from the Majority Report, talking about the failure of liberal talk radio and why it failed, and also needing to comment on my long hiatus. So, the reason why I haven't been streaming much in the last few weeks was because I, of course, to many people, the few people who have watched and subscribed to the show, I am currently in school. And with the semester going on, initially I thought I could, keep doing the show and going to school at the same time. And for a while that worked. Uh, ARC. Uh, for a while, I thought it could work, and I realized that I was overwhelming myself and needed to take a much needed break. And so I stepped away for a little bit and focused on school and had the idea that when the Thanksgiving break rolled around, I could sort of start streaming more like I wanted to and like I should have been. After all, this is what I've wanted to do since I was 13. I wanted to be in broadcasting and journalism, and after many failed attempts at getting internships, I discovered the new technology of podcasting and Twitch streaming through the Young Turks and got passionate about that side of broadcasting as well as left politics. And so uh, I developed this keen interest after watching several different leftist uh, news podcasters, commentators, and streamers, whatever you want to call them. Uh, and so I started this up. I was in school and realized I needed to take a break. And I took a break for a little bit, but now I am definitely back. As far as the next time when I could stream, and please excuse my nervousness because this is the first time I've done this in a while. Um, the next all Twitch only stream that I'm planning, because I am planning to do one. I did one during Thanksgiving holiday, like I said I would, and it kind of it went well, but I was not able to do as many as I thought I would because just the holiday wasn't as long as I thought it was, and also I wanted to spend time with friends. Um, However, the Christmas break now is among me, and with the semester almost over, I have devised a plan from December 15th until January 17th, when the spring semester starts back up, to start streaming full time during that time, meaning more TJRS, more Twitch only streams, where I get to turn into Hassan Piker. I mean, on this show, I tend to kind of be like, just a modern day uh, Majority Report kind of person, which, no disrespect. I love the Majority Report and I love Sam Cedar and I admire Emma Vigeland and that whole group. Uh, but on the Twitch only streams, I get to do a little bit more free flow and get to show my inner side, like I said, my inner Hassan Piker, which I am like thrilled to do. And I was great to do that with my current with the Twitch only stream this past week during the holiday break. So yeah, I don't want it to be long winded and explain why like I was gone and now why I'm back. I just long story short, I was in school. I needed to focus on the semester. I needed to do studying and do homework. I needed to step away, and I also needed to take a break to rest and reset and recalibrate. And now, fully, I am back with a vengeance. So I'll definitely be streaming tonight. I'll be doing tomorrow. I'll be doing Wednesday. Hopefully, I'll be able to do Thursday and Friday. It depends on how the week goes. We'll see. So, with that, again, hi to RC who just popped in. Go check out Ferdokia Enemy on Substack. He also is a frequent co-host on Movie Night Extravaganza with Forrest Miller, and These Are Bad Movies with Amanda Fioriante and Amy Bell. He's also the co-host of I think we used to call it the Sunday Stream, but we don't call it that anymore. We changed it. I think we're doing it the Monday Stream, but tonight I want to be a little different. So we'll do more co-hosting streams with RC in the future because I know that he and I have a lot to tell y'all in the not so distant future of news and politics and in leftist uh, in our leftist community that we so belong. But having said that, again, tonight's show is going to be talking about the new variant that has popped up in the COVID world, and also a This Is Revolution viewership, which I'm looking forward to. Again, with their guest Sam Cedar about liberal talk radio and its surprising failure in the world of conservative talk radio. So, with that, I'm going to share my screen. I am going to hit a tab because we're talking about and I hope people can hear me, and I may just have to dismiss the overlay for now so that you can see this. See, getting right into it. The new SARS-CoV, what they call SARS-CoV-2 variant of concern, which is the classification of what they call Omicron. Kind of sounds like a Transformers robot. Is what my classmate in biology said today. Omicron sounds like one of the Transformer robots in a way. I guess it's meant to be funny. Basically, talk about independent group during the evolution of this variant and is assessing its mutations and the combinations of the behavior, which is known as B.1.1.1529, and it was reported to the WHO in South Africa on November 24th. That was, if I open my date and time, I will be able to see, was last Wednesday. And it apparently has traveled through, I believe when I watched the news this morning, there was some mutation. Somebody had gotten this variant in Australia. Somebody who was on a flight to Australia who had come down with the new Omicron virus, or the Omicron variant of the COVID virus, and had to basically, as has happened with the Delta before and the other form before the Delta, social distance. And luckily that person was vaccinated, which is what we should all hopefully be doing to prevent the COVID virus or the coronavirus from getting any worse than it already is. I'm on track to get my booster next month, so I'm very much so looking forward to that. Oh, and before I forget, try. I'm gonna actually stop sharing my screen for a moment and put this up here. This is a new energy drink that I just started. It's called Bang. I've been shout out to Christina Oaks, aka Christina on Twitch for suggesting. I actually found this at the local Family Dollar store and found out that she drinks the berry kind. I like the purple haze kind. So thanks, Christina, if you're watching. Um, anyway, uh, the yeah, it's basically keeping it simple. We must be vaccinated. Hopefully, everyone has been getting vaccinated as per usual. Um, that said, that most of the J&J vaccinations, or most of the vaccinations, in light of this new variant that has approached or has been identified, is now kind of making the manufacturers of the different vaccines to prevent the coronavirus from getting any worse. And they're sort of reassessing their ability to see how they work against this new variant. And, you know, keeping it short and sweet, but keeping it honest, the only way to prevent another travesty among us with the ever growing mountain of infections and most of all deaths that this has caused, we just have to get hopefully vaccinated. I mean, we just have to get vaccinated. And, there's also antiviral drugs in the works as far as a secondary option. For example, pull this up. I found 2 articles on this. I know it's not enough, but again, I don't want to be too preachy on the topic because, again, this new variant is just new among us, and we're probably going to need to do more information. So there's also the safety review of the FDA of the COVID pill that is being, there we go, of the new COVID pill that is being tested and worked out to prevent the spread of the COVID virus, the coronavirus is what I'm trying to say. Uh, okay, so key advisors of the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, are scheduled to meet Tuesday, which was this. This is today, so tomorrow, to decide whether to recommend that the agency grant emergency use authorization to Merck's experimental pill to treat COVID-19. Members of the agency's antimicrobial drugs advisory committee will scrutinize the company's data before voting on whether the drug's overall benefits outweigh its risk. The FDA doesn't have to follow the committee's advice, but it often does. Merck asked the FDA in October to clear its drug called Mol. I knew I'd probably mess this up. Molnu Molnupiravir for use in adults with mild to moderate COVID-19 who are at risk for severe disease or hospitalization. If granted emergency use authorization, it would be the first antiviral pill to treat the disease. All other FDA-backed treatments require an IV or an injection. Results released Friday by Merck show that the drug reduced the risk of hospitalization and death among the high-risk COVID patients by 30%. It's down from the estimate 50% that the company made in October and lower than currently authorized monoclonal antibody treatments, which have been shown to reduce the risk of severe outcomes from COVID by at least 70%. FDA science have noted the potential risk of the drug, particularly to pregnant women. Excuse the noise outside. The sirens are bleeding through my audio. As animal studies suggest that could cause harm to the fetus or possible birth defects. The risks were not observed by the clinical trials, however, because pregnant women were excluded from Merck's study and the use of contraception was required for all participants, the agency said. Um, so, in a way, it means that women who are pregnant or become pregnant would have to be very careful and cautious when taking the COVID pill for the potential side effects that it may have, just like the vaccines have, because we knew about that, right? I mean, we knew when the vaccines were getting developed. We were told that these are not going to be without the potential side effects. Whatever vaccine we got, I got a double shot of Moderna. First shot was a shot in the arm, and the arm just felt like hell for the first few days. The second shot, I developed flu-like symptoms and slept it off for like a day and a half. But I got better, and it worked. So again, keeping it short and sweet. My my response, or what you could call response to this, would just like, look, with this now among us, we're not trying to panic. We're just being cautious. It's just a concern. There's a need for those who aren't vaccinated to do so to prevent the spread from coming into the US amongst the already variants that are already here. We've talked about this, well, not necessarily we as in myself and the viewers, but other people have talked about this already. So I'm not telling you anything that isn't new. I know that there are some what you call anti-vax people that are probably going to look at this and go, "Oh, so you're telling me that I should just abandon everything that I know?" It's like, no, I'm not. I'm just saying, as more of a plea, just abandon whatever belief you have for 1 minute. If you don't want to get vaccinated, when these antiviral drugs become available, hopefully very, very soon, maybe you could go that route. If your beliefs prevent you from having a needle literally stuck in your arm. If you get what I'm saying, and I hope you do. So, I know that's not a whole lot. I understand it's very brief. I know I should do more. I should talk more about it. And trust me, I will. But as the news of this new variant has is now fresh in the news cycle and will be for days, weeks, maybe a month to come, hopefully just a month. Um, this what I probably would call a Transformers variant, because again, it sounds like a Transformers virus. Uh, Omicron, Omicron. Um, just do what you know needs to be done. That's what I'd say. That's what I would say. That's my honest view. That's my honest response. That's my honest opinion. Just do what you know needs to be done to prevent any kind of this already piling tragedy amongst others. All right. I know that, again, I know it wasn't a whole lot, but I want to get to This is Revolution and Jason Miles and Sam Seder to talk about the failing of liberal talk radio and why it didn't succeed in the mountain upon mountain of conservatives in I'm stuttering, in the AM radio field that included the late curmudgeon, as I'd call him, because he was a curmudgeon, Rush Limbaugh. The late, he wasn't a good curmudgeon. I'll tell you that. I'm not, before you start, the keyboard warriors and chat warriors start coming after me, ask me, what do you mean by curmudgeon? I mean, he was that old grouchy, grumpy, conservative, whiny, boomer-esque curmudgeon that I couldn't even stand. I mean, believe it. And I have to sign in to my YouTube account. So hold on. Hold the horses. Hold on just 1 minute. I will say to RC, if you're still watching, how you been, man? How's your holiday? Did you have fun? Did you do anything fun? Went to see a concert before the holiday. That was great. So and I'm looking into getting a desktop computer. I'm transitioning from streaming on a small MacBook to a computer, a bigger, desktop computer with a bigger angle. So I'm looking forward to that. I've been looking at desktop computers during the holiday break to see which one's good. Okay, so Seder, good old Sam Seder. Okay, I found it. Whoops, hold on. There we go. And share screen. Honestly, this is the first time I've seen this, so honestly, this is the very first time that I've seen this, and I'm really looking forward to this, because this being a big news and media junkie, news, media, and political junkie, if you ever heard of the movie, which I have, Left of the Dial, which is a documentary about Air America Radio itself, and why it failed, and why it didn't do as well as it should have, then you should check it out. It's interesting, and Sam is seen quite a bit in the doc. So.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of This is Revolution Podcast. We, of course, have a very good show tonight. We have Sam Seder on tonight, and I do want to say this before I even bring in my co-host. Being coming from the music industry and then being in this industry, one thing I've always appreciated is the help of elder professionals that have, you know, a bigger platform. And in the music world, I got a lot of help from bands like Faith Moore and Godflesh, Roderick and Godflesh, which helped out, you know, tremendously. And in this world, it's people like, you know, Doug Lane that have helped us out a lot, and Sam Seder, who has platformed Pascal and I. So I just want to say big shout out to Sam, because we're a really small show and he doesn't have to do that, but the fact that he does, we really appreciate that. That being said, let me bring in my homie, my co-host, my dog. He is the man of the Mau Mau Hour. He has a very popular piece right now. Are black people the crash test dummies for the Democratic Party? He is the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles.
Are you ready for tonight, Pascal?
I'm ready, man. Yeah, I really like Sam. I think he's a cool guy.
I feel like an idiot because I had been watching this. Someone had uploaded the documentary about Air America to YouTube, but they didn't put it under the name. They put it under a different name, and I found it, but it was in parts. I want to say they put it in like 15-minute increments, probably to not get it pulled down. And I kept telling myself, send it to Pascal, send it to Pascal. But as you know, as maybe the people watching don't know, I've been having massive wives because made these ridiculous moves without planning anything out. I moved to a place that has like no infrastructure for fiber optic connections. So I'm kind of stuck with a subpar internet connection, but good enough to do the show. So I kept forgetting to give it to you and send it to you because I kept going. I had to like physically drive to the place and hammer out problems. So I apologize.
It's quite all right.
But I made a clip and I made some corrections to the clip because originally when I posted it, I had the wrong year on a movie that I posted. And then people keep asking, what movie is that? What movie is that? The movie is called Talk Radio with Eric Bogosian. Is the probably best role he ever did. Really enjoyed that movie. And it came out in 1988. And I had to make some editing to that so we don't get hit with a demonetization strike. So before we bring in Brother Seder, let's play the clip.
We won't be able to stop it, Ken.
Brother, government. Corporations, I mean, they're a bunch of fascists, you know, they want to control everybody's mind, I mean, but hey, freedom's an important thing, just like you always say, Bear. See, the best things, Bear, risk you all time, man. Great.
Kent, you're an idiot. I sincerely hope you do not represent the future of this country, because if you do, we are in such shape.
Man, you're so funny, man. That's why I love to listen to your show. That's why all the kids listen to you, man. Plus, you know, these goons push you around, you know, all the kids listen to you, man.
You discuss a lot of serious subjects on this show.
We have 2 writers assigned to us. every day from like 4 to 9.
Great.
Who are the writers? Who are we going to have on our show? It's going to be a never-changing thing.
Oh,
A
okay.
very young Sam Seder and Janine Garofalo
I'm just happy about that.
in the back.
I'm not nervous only because, both Sam and I are so passionate about this. We spend so much time talking about these issues anyway, and had for a couple of years always wished that we had a talk radio show, and now we finally have one. But if I'm not good at this, I don't want to be here being a kind of a drag on the station. I would want them to be honest with me and say, look, we thought this was going to work out, and it's just not working out, so we're going to have to place you. That's totally fine.
I have to say that I almost totally agree with Janine. I would want them not to be honest with me. I'd want them to come to me and say, Sam,
A very, very young looking Sam Seder in this video, in this movie. Again, if those watching or the person watching is interested, the movie's called Left of the Dial. It came out in like 2004 during the height of the Iraq War. Like this was at a time when like Fox News and Bill O'Reilly was, they were popular. It was the tail end of Clinton, and George W. was in power, and and it was just a bit like the conservative talk radio, like Limbaugh had was in power, was popular, and all these other weird wacko conservative nutheads, as I'd call them. Uh, they had their day, they had their day to shine, and like watching this documentary, it kind of made me realize how far we've come in 17 years. So for any like Majority Report fan, it's 11 years. I think it was this past week since the show premiered as a podcast, but 17 years if if you go back to Air America days in 2004. Just pointing that out. Just pointing it out.
you're very
The rise of conservative talk radio following the repeal of the Federal Communication Commission's Fairness Doctrine in 1987 has had profound impact on the political landscape of the United States. Taking advantage of the newly liberalized regulatory order, a wave of reactionary hosts, most notably Rush Limbaugh, took to the air to propagate their far-right political message. Indeed, they formed the vanguard of opposition to the Democratic Party administration of Bill Clinton. And following the constitutional coup d'etat that installed George W. Bush as president, the rightist talkers emerged as key regime propagandists. While it is perhaps an exaggeration to claim that talk radio created the political divisions that bisect American society, conservative domination of the medium certainly fed the growing radicalism of the reactionary right. The power of talk radio, both to groom and mobilize elements of the American public, was not lost in the left flank of Capitol. And in 2004, Air America, a progressive talk radio network, was founded. Yet this experiment failed, and in 2010, the network was shut down. What was the American media landscape like in the 2000s? What explains the failure of Air America? And will the new plethora of independent online left media outlets be able to overcome the issues that brought down liberal talk radio?
I will say this. What brought it down was the fact that, again, conservatives had that dominated that airspace. They still do. I mean, there was a time when there was a liberal talk radio network and an alternative to MSNBC that was called Current TV, that was owned and operated by Al Gore and Joe Hyatt. It's been what 8 years, I think, since he sold that to Al Jazeera, and it became Al Jazeera America, which was short lived and folded within 3 years. So That was not that long. Not that long.
And more. This is Revolution.
I should hang. I'm a hypocrite. I ask for sincerity and I lie. I denounce the system as I embrace it. I want money and power and prestige. I want ratings and success. I don't give a damn about you or the world. That's the truth. For this, I could say I'm sorry, but I won't. Why should I? I mean, who the hell are you anyways, you audience? You're on me every night like a pack of wolves because you can't stand facing what you are and what you've made. Yes, the world is a terrible place. Yes, cancer and garbage disposals will get you. Yes, a war is coming. Yes, the world is shut to hell and you're all goners. Everything's screwed up and you like it that way, don't you? You're fascinated by the gory details. You're mesmerized by your own fear. You revel in floods, car accidents, unstoppable diseases. You're happiest when others are in pain. That's where I come in, isn't it? I'm here to lead you by the hands through the dark forest of your own hatred and anger and humiliation. I'm providing a public service. You're so scared. You're like a little child under the covers. You're afraid of the boogeyman, but you can't live without.
Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to. All right. That was a long intro, but I really liked the movie Talk Radio. I watched it when I was like 12.
I can tell.
Right?
I can tell you
Right?
weren't. I can tell you weren't.
I was into this shit like a motherfucker.
No question.
Let's bring in the man of the hour. He is the host of the Majority Report, the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We got him because we couldn't get Janine. Sam Seder.
That I have to say that is probably really the explanation of my entire career. To be honest with you. When they wanted Janine and they couldn't get her, they were like, "All right, whatever, we'll take that guy."
I totally tried to find Janine Garofalo's email, and it is hidden.
That does not exist. I can assure you that does not exist.
And I tried to email whoever said that they were managing her at the time, and I never got a response. So apparently, Janine does not show up on this show.
I doubt that Janine even ever got the hold. That is not how she, honestly, like connecting with Janine is one of the oddest things in the world that you can imagine. But I won't go into the details. But I saw her actually last week, and if I told you how that went down, you wouldn't believe it. It's honestly like a spy movie. Like, we have to meet at a certain place. There is no communication that takes place. She doesn't travel with her phone. No, it's a throwback. It's a throwback.
She's just famous enough that I was working for a kids TV show, and I was out with some guys that were guests on the show that were actors that are like somewhat recognizable. They're not on we call them B-list, right? And one of them always plays a very wholesome role. And we were at a bar, literally watching a baseball game, and he was drinking a beer. And someone was trying to take his picture. I remember him being like, "Dude, can you not do that? Because if you take my picture, you send it to TMZ, then I'm a big drunk, and it's really gonna fuck up my shit. So can you not like do that?" And I was like, "Damn, that sucks, because you're not even like that fan."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, that is, I mean, particularly, back in the aughts when we were doing Air America, and before then, Janine was one of the few people that was basically allowed to go on TV and speak up against the war. And they would invite her on specifically because she was an actress. And then the first thing they would say is like,
I remember because my and I this does not reflect me or my views today, but my dad growing up would always watch, and this is a shocking thing to admit, but my dad every morning growing up, he used to watch when I was growing up, he would always put on Fox News and Fox and Friends. And I remember when Janine Garofalo, who's like this big, like lefty progressive comedian actress, she's probably one of the best comedians out there. Uh, at least that's my take. Uh, she went on Fox and Friends, and was debating or getting into an argument with Brian Kilmeade about why we went into Iraq in the first place, which, knowing what we know now, was a total disaster. I mean, I don't even need to go into specifics to know why, to tell you why it was a disaster, because we already know. Um, but I remember she got into to an alter with, I guess you'd say, a debate these days with Brian Kilmeade, and she told all the co-host to their face that Fox News was a conservative mouthpiece for the Bush White House that was in power at the time, and saying that Dick Cheney was most likely very much so calling them in the morning. And I just thought, man, that was like 17 years ago at this point, or I think now like 18 years ago. Or yeah, probably 16, 17 years ago. And I was just thinking it's weird kind of how we feel about the Trump administration. How like Trump was calling them up consistently. He would like watch Fox and Friends and tweet, not call them, but tweet at them, that he would sit at home in the White House in the bed in the living quarters and tweet that he was watching Fox and Friends and repeat what they were saying. It's just like so eeringly to think about it in retrospect, but I digress.
like, who are you to talk about this? You're an actress. As if like she somehow apparated in the, the studio. And I mean, the experience of being famous is one thing, but the experience of being famous and then hated like she was. I mean, I think, it's sort of hard to understand for, I think, people who didn't live through that era, how violent and threatening it was, and how isolated you felt if you were.
Okay, I don't mean to keep pausing the video. I just want to do this and just say that I'm going to step away from the camera for just a minute so I can make myself some dinner. I don't want to turn the camera off or anything, so you'll be like looking at an empty chair for a few moments while the video is going. But I'm gonna keep the show running so I'll be right back.
Were against the war, if you had a problem with what was going on with the 2000 election, it was really isolating. And I think, to lead into Air America, I think that's why when Air America launched, the enthusiasm that it generated was so huge, because there was nothing even remotely like it.
There's nothing.
I'm looking forward to actually, because Sam, you and I are contemporaries in age, and
I'm a little older than you are.
A little bit, just a little bit, 2 years, and we don't have to go there. But we were old enough to remember this era. And as I told you, I started blogging around 2007, but I was an Air America listener, and I remember the 2008 election. I lived in Florida. I did not vote for Bush, and I remember the controversy. And it's amazing how in the view of where we are today politically in America, that seems like eons ago in terms of what has transpired. But what's really fascinating is that we have a whole cadre and generation and group of people who are like, well, we're radical, we're Marxist Leninists, we're sock dams, we're this, we're this and that. And what really makes me realize is that in 2000, you were radical just for challenging the war on terror, just for challenging the Bush administration. No one was really talking about Marxism, dialectical materialism. No. That didn't exist. But literally, what constituted the most radical thing on the left during the Bush years was Code Pink.
Yep.
Code Pink is still so. Look, Sam. Let's go back to 2001, 9/11. Tell me about, or talk to the people about the political climate during that time and how that moment kind of, I won't say rehabilitated George Bush Jr., but really cemented his legacy as president. Because I think a lot of people, because of Trump, we've forgotten the backlash to Bush. And what was funny was watching your documentary. It's taking place for the second Bush election.
That's right. I mean, we started
John Kerry.
Yep.
And there's a big ramp up to, this is the big bad. And if the big bad gets into office, we'll fight these wars that won't end. And everything's going to be horrible if the big bad gets in office. And he won decidedly. But take us back to that time and what the media landscape looked like, because now we're around the time that Air America comes to be, we're about not quite 20 years, like 13, 14 years in to deregulation, to the point where now you're getting a big swell of right-wing voices. The movie that I showed, Talk Radio, actually the man who it's based on was not a right-wing voice. Actually,
no, it was Byrd,
and was murdered.
Yeah, I think was it Byrd? Was he in Chicago or Detroit? I can't remember. I can't
it was
remember
Colorado.
Exactly. Colorado, right? And but let me just I'll speak to 2001, but I just want to reiterate what Pascal said, was that there was no language. I mean, even during Occupy, these concepts were not, people were not fluent in them in the way that they are now. There was no dialect. I mean, look, I knew Marxists. I knew Marxists in college, but there was no, there was just simply no discussion of it in like any type of mass media, or even even to the extent that there was subcultures, there wasn't much there. I mean, I remember having Bernie on in 2004, and it was like, whoa, like he identifies as a socialist, and it was, but there was, the language didn't exist. We were so far removed from that, that yes, Code Pink was as radical as it got, and it was really just, the radicalism was only insofar as how much you were willing to speak out and express dissent. It was not ideologically based in the way that, wasn't rooted in any type of, that language just did not exist. In fact, at that time in 2004, and this was also the case during the 2000s, frankly, 2001 and really in the years following Limbaugh's ascent in '88 is when he started, but he immediately skyrocketed. The word liberal was as pejorative as it is today, but from the right. I mean, it was
even from people like Stern.
Oh, I mean, everybody. In fact, the reason why we use the term progressive today was that people felt they had to abandon the word liberal because it was perceived as too far left.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, like I'm talking like I'm from Mars, you know, for people who are in their 20s and 30s, because now, to the extent that you hear the word liberal as a pejorative, it's always coming from the left as opposed to the right. But in 2000, there were a couple of things happening, and George Bush was wildly unpopular by the time the summer came along, and they were beginning. I cannot remember the timing of the tax cuts that he was pushing, but I feel like it was in the fall. And not only that, in the September issue of Newsweek, which never ultimately came out, and I actually interviewed the editor of Newsweek who talked about this piece, and he disputes some of what I'm retelling, but not in a specific way that I think that the gist of the story is incorrect. They were going to. I had understood that Newsweek was going to put this on the cover of their magazine at the time. And understand, Newsweek and Time at that point were the only magazines that Americans read. There was, like, it's sort of hard to remember that, but like Newsweek and Time were the two magazines that America read. It was like the networks. And Newsweek was either going to put on their cover, they certainly ran with the story at one point, or they certainly had the story, that there was an argument that had broke out on the Supreme Court when, oddly enough, I think it was Russian judges had visited over the summer, and about the Bush v. Gore ruling. And the story in Newsweek was about the fracturing that was taking place on the Supreme Court, because I from my estimation, and I was obsessed with that election. In fact, I made a low budget movie that was sort of somewhat. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's not even, you don't even know the half of it. But it was sort of obsessed around that notion. And I had taken hundreds of pictures of my TV during the recount. It was obsessive. And there was like this sort of shock, I think, that the liberal establishment felt, particularly in the legal establishment, because they didn't think that the Supreme Court would ever take that case. And they were shocked by it because it was the most naked example of what a lot of like critical legal studies people had been saying about the court for a long time, which is they're political. And it became a shock for a lot in the legal establishment, I think.
Well, you know, it's funny you said it, because I was actually practicing law when the Bush v. Gore case came down. And I was actually working in the Florida judiciary system as a case manager in the domestic violence unit. And I remember most of my friends out of law school being horrified by that case. It's going to be the time is so far, but Bush v. Gore, there are people who were I have friends, and I was one of them, but I have friends who would regularly monitor the Supreme Court. Like they took it seriously. They would seriously like watch on the Mondays and Thursdays when decisions came out what the court was doing, because they took the court to be a very serious institution. I know many, many attorneys who literally gave up on taking the Supreme Court seriously.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, as a result of Bush v. Gore. Let me tell you how ridiculous Bush v. Gore was. Bush v. Gore was so ridiculous that Dershowitz wrote a book about how they got it wrong.
Yeah.
Dershowitz was looked at as more of a leftist figure during this era.
That's how bad
than he is now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, it rocked the institution, and there was a sense coming in August. I mean, over the course of that summer, that's this stuff like that the shock that they had felt was starting to wear off, and people were actually starting to speak up about it. I mean, there was big protests at the Bush inauguration, but they were hidden. It was really the beginning of. It was the first time that I remembered, anyways, that there was like free speech zones. and the protesters were put behind the what do you call those? The bleachers. They were put behind the bleachers, so you couldn't see them. The TV never recorded them, but there was, and I don't know that there was like, there certainly wasn't 50, 100,000 of them, but there was thousands of people protesting an inauguration, which never really happened before, as far as I knew. And there was a sense that this was catching up with Bush. He was not popular. He was, and then 9/11 hits, and it is a completely different political world.
It changed the whole nature. I mean, it's funny that there are kids nowadays who are politically active who literally were too young to remember this, that are like adults right now. But what is really funny, right, is that people don't understand that, first of all,
I mean, I just have to say, as someone who was myself, as Pascal was saying right there, who was too young. I was 9 on September 11th. I was in 3rd grade, and it was my class picture day. And my first real political memory was going into the polling place with my mom and at the time 2 sisters, where she voted for Al Gore in 2000. I was the only two people in my 2nd grade class when the 2000 election was. We had to make hats of the 2 candidates that we thought we would vote for if we could. Um, Myself and another old friend were the only 2 Al Gore supporters in a wave of George W. Bush people. Again, this is very conservative Missouri. More conservative, the town that I grew up in, than it is now. There was a good smattering of Democrats in a way, but it was still kind of how do we say, it was hidden, like the union people, the leftists, the progressives, the socialists. But there wasn't really any left socialist people in a small town like that at the time. Now there would be, but now it's kind of like, huh. But yeah, I'm going off on a tangent here, but my first real memory was of 2000 was, my mom voting for Gore, making hats on election near the election, and two people, myself and another friend, supporting Gore in a sea trove of George W. supporters, and the rest is history.
the idea of a third-party candidate was supposed to be delegitimized by the fact that everyone used to say that, what's his name? Lost Florida.
Nader.
Ralph Nader. Nader lost Florida. If it wasn't for Nader, I mean, there was like
Nader becomes a, I don't want to say character, but he's a bit of a figure in the documentary, and it brought me back to that time, because if you ever meet people, and I want to say this, which sounds funny to me, because I'm the baby on this show at 44, which is kind of nice, right? And the irony, I have the oldest kids out of everybody here. When you meet people that voted for Nader in 2000, and I don't know if it's like this for you too, Pascal, those were like the crazy left wingers. We're not talking Marxists. If you voted for Nader in 2000, you were like, it was beyond Bernie, because there was no, he was doing some big
you were considered like a whack job.
Yeah. And there's a scene where there's a scene where, go ahead.
I voted for Nader. And now I voted for Nader in New York, and they had a thing that was called, and I was in New York, and but they did have there was a website. This is Web 1.0, I guess, when if you were lucky to get DSL. there was a like an exchange or a swap thing where you would put in, I'm voting for Nader in New York to trade with someone in Florida, ostensibly. I mean, you didn't know who it was. You just put it up there. And that was, I mean, I probably would have voted for Nader anyways in New York at that time. But I just should say for full disclosure. But yes, I remember what you're about to talk about when Randy Rhoads had him on.
Randy Rhoads goes off on Ralph Nader as a guest on her show, and she blames Ralph Nader. And I don't know if she's walked this back since. She blames Ralph Nader for George Bush.
Can I explain to you why that's absolutely horse crap?
Oh, go for it.
Don't forget, I lived in Florida. It's horse crap because don't forget the difference between Bush and Gore came down to like a couple of less than 100 votes, I think, or less than 5 or something. It's very ridiculous.
100, if, you know, depending on which count you look at any given point, because the times went back, but it's well under 1,000. Let's put it.
Under 1,000, right? People fail to realize something. According to the actual record, there were 200,000 Democrats in the state of Florida that voted for George Bush.
Mm.
I mean, let's put it this way. It's one of those things where it's impossible to know a but for in this situation. You could say it was the butterfly ballots with you know, where you had all these old Jewish folks in Palm Beach voting for, you know, Pat Buchanan, which highly unlikely that they meant to do that. The thing I think that there was anger towards Nader was that he had originally promised not to run in contested states and then changed his mind. And I think that was probably a certain amount of overconfidence. I don't know what it was, but you could also say like Al Gore was an idiot for not campaigning with Bill Clinton, who was, you know, despite what you think about his politics.
Al Gore was an idiot for having Joe Lieberman as the vice presidential candidate.
And
I mean, the Gore, and again, I was, you know, I was 8 when in 2000 when the Gore campaign happened. So my first real memory of any kind of electoral politics was that election. I mean, I could be flubbing on this, and I might not be able to make sense. I hope I do. You know, it's like all factors of Al Gore losing the election point to Gore himself. My conclusion would be if he had focused on the accomplishments at the time of the Clinton administration rather than the failures and the setbacks, who knows what the outcome would have been. Maybe it would have changed things, maybe it wouldn't, you know, who knows. And again, I'm someone who has grown so far left of the political spectrum that I wouldn't even call Al Gore a socialist today. Even though back then conservatives were calling his politics socialist. I mean, by Gore's own admission, he was a raging moderate in the 80s and then changed his political views as he got into the 90s and then in the 2000s as first as vice president and then as, of course, a presidential candidate. So that's just my little, you know, blurb that I have to say.
And Al Gore was an idiot for having Joe Lieberman. I should say that character in that movie was a fictionalized Joe Lieberman son. My hatred for Joe Lieberman knows no bounds. Like I say, there's a bunch of things. Nader became I think the easiest thing to blame on some level because it was it was just a, you know, question of him deciding to go down there. And I think, you know, from my perspective at the time, I was like, he promised also to build the Green Party, and he didn't do it. He more or less walked away from it. And after that, and I think that contributed to a lot of anger towards Nader too, or at least prevented for a lot of pushback, because part of the promise at that time was to build a
third party.
and he literally walked away from it. And so I think that is where some of that blame came from, or at least the absence of people sort of defending him.
Well, the thing is, though, it's really easy, right? I mean, I think we would all agree that for a lot of kind of existential reasons, it's the millennium, it's the new century, the year 2000, all of the hoopla, the Y2K problem, all of that nonsense that was being thrown out around the fact that we were coming into the 21st century that we were hearing, and we had this election. So there was all kinds of ridiculous existential angst about this election. But I will have to admit that you did feel a shift in the political energy in America as a result of the Bush-Gore election in 2000 that took us into a darker place that I didn't feel again really until Trump in 2016.
Yeah.
But the thing that is interesting, though, is that the trajectory of really, really bad presidents from, I would say Carter, Reagan, Bush, the father, Clinton, Bush the son, and Obama. That trajectory, the neoliberal, like the last that whole period in the neoliberal turn, which no one was even, unless you were an academic who had been writing for 20 years, no one was saying the word neoliberal, but these are all things that come about as a result of the 2008 crash. And what people also have to realize is that, and I know Jason knows this, the economy started rocking and rolling in the Bush years.
Why is that? Because Sam forced me to write part 2 because I was going to lag and not write 2 to my piece. So while I'm down here in Mexico writing part 2, then Doug Lane convinced me to write a book. So I'm doing all this goddamn research into deregulation, and deregulation starts lightly under Carter, ramps up under Clinton, and
under Reagan.
Under Reagan. And well, it really ramps up under Clinton because that's when we start seeing Glass-Steagall. And by 99, Glass-Steagall's all gone. But 94 is really the year where the bones of Glass-Steagall really start coming out. So by the time the Clinton era ends, we see an end to Glass-Steagall, and we're also starting to see a jump in home value. So the Clinton administration becomes a great come up for the middle class, just based off deregulation. And you get so much more of it with Bush, and it gets kind of these weird mixed results. So you have Enron on one hand with Bush, right? And you also have this blow up of the middle class. And I'm not just talking about white folks.
And also, I'm going to interject of the corporate influence that Enron had in George W.'s career leading up to his presidency. When I say, George W. the son, and the fact that just still haunted him throughout his presidency into the end. I mean, a lot of employees went to jail for corruption in the second maybe year, like towards the midterm of George W.'s first term. And he's still, and Republicans still won that midterm election, which is shockingly enough.
People of color now can move on up out of the hood and buy houses in these nice new suburbs that are popping up everywhere. The McMansions, as you people call them, are popping up everywhere. And of course, fast forward to the end of the aughts, and those areas of McMansions like the central part of California became literal ghost towns, where these houses that people bought for $500,000 and $600,000 were worth, pennies on the dollar after that, and they were literally being advised by their tax people to walk away from them. But I do feel you on that move politically, Pascal, because I believe that people really thought the prosperity was here again, and also we're talking about an era of anti-politics.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that's
a part of.
And also, we should say, in terms of the big deregulation under Clinton, was the Telecommunications Act, I think of 94, yes. Maybe it was 96, 94. And and so much of our news is a function of that. So much of the ability of Rupert Murdoch to dominate our news, both in print and in terms of TV, came out of that. And yes, the .com boom. I mean, it was nuts. There's was it the end of the century? What was that book?
The .com boom happens around like 99, 2000. And I remember,
the .com
I remember because I was working in real estate finance at the time, as a lowly paper pusher at that time. And I remember we had a very, I would say maybe 2-3 months of a shakeup. And then all those offices got replaced with real estate offices and title companies.
The other thing that was happening, and I don't know when that started, I feel like it might have started happening, but interest rates were dropping significantly.
That was fueling the real estate market.
And people just were trying to find a place to
Alan
make their money work.
Was actually still respected as a genius.
Yes. Yes, he was. But so that was the era, and people were very depoliticized. And part of it was, I think, like, I mean, Pascal, you can tell me, your perspective on this, but my sense was that, Generation X was so overshadowed by the boomers, and was, our parents more or less were, of a generation where, you had like the yippies, like there was a debate.
And now the millennials are being overshadowed by Gen X. It's the same. It's the same feeling that Generation X had, being overshadowed by the generation before them. So it's the millennials being overshadowed by Gen X, and now Gen Z is being overshadowed by millennials, and then a few years down the road, maybe a few more decades, the Zoomers. So it's this chain. It's this chain pull, if you will, of each generation being overshadowed by their peers.
There was literally a traveling debate, I think, when I was in college, maybe in the mid '80s. Maybe it launched after that, but Abbie Hoffman had come out of hiding at that point, and he was doing a tour. And then subsequent to that, he ended up doing a tour with Jerry Rubin, which was the yippies versus the yuppies. And it was just that dichotomy where both like the yippies seemed to go nowhere and the yuppies seemed to be sort of like a bleak prospect. That is where I feel like society was.
Well, I'm glad. Listen, Sam, we're gonna go here, man, because we are contemporaries. We remember a lot of people our age consider the Reagan years their glory days.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard for people to understand. People in the early to mid 50s, even if they hated Reagan, they loved the feel, because we were so trapped in capitalist realism. Yeah, Reagan was racist and we hated everything, but Reagan was like a very reactionary president that a lot of people hated, but a lot of people liked the money. That was great for the middle class. It was horrible, definitely, for particularly poor Black folk who were getting underclass ideology, mass incarceration. But let's think about, I relegate this particularly to like black popular culture. This is the birth of the golden age of hip hop. You know, there's all this like the hyper capitalization of black popular culture. The first multi-millionaire athletes, you know, basketball, Magic Johnson, Dr. J, the whole culture industry in the 80s. I mean, it starts in the 70s, but it's like really hyper capitalized.
Greed is good.
Yeah,
Greed is good.
Not just black popular culture, across the board, right? It's like, and it's just infused everywhere. And the movie that I think really demonstrates how bad it got generationally in terms of the baby boomers, that when you really see the transparent kind of this sellout nature of what they became. Anyone remember the movie The Big Chill?
Yep.
Of course. It's huge.
The Big Chill, very important movie. For those who have never seen The Big Chill, the plot of The Big Chill is about a bunch of young professional, like probably in their early 40s, late 30s,
younger,
in their 30s.
Yeah, early 30s, I would say.
Former 60s hippies. So these were people who were like radicals in the 60s. They were like student for the Democratic Society. They were down with the Panthers. They were like, the whole movie, the soundtrack to the movie is all kinds of 60s music, right? And one of their friends from the 60s, they all went to University of Michigan, I believe that was the school.
Had died.
One of their friends committed suicide. And they all, who hadn't seen each other for a year, go to the guy's funeral who committed suicide. And they're all just kind of like, smoking weed, like, oh, this is so rebellious. Oh my God, we haven't done this since college. And they're all just like listening to all this like 60s R&B music, which is the song soundtrack. And the whole theme of the show is how this is during the 80s, they're all very successful, and they're all waxing rhapsodic about how basically they kind of sold out all of that liberal left stuff that they were protesting about, and they were getting paid. Like, one of the women is a lawyer, and she basically like literally says that, like, if someone says like, she says, I represent real estate companies. I do real estate law. Yeah. And someone says like, there was a time that I used to think I would look forward to, representing like Bobby Seale. And then someone said something like now you're worried about like, some young black kid his age that you want to make sure gets like, incarcerated or something like that. And it was so transparent. And I'm going to tell you right now, when I see The Big Chill, and I think in the 50-year counter-revolution, right? Do you know who I think about when I see The Big Chill? I think about the Clintons. Because the Clintons are the Big Chill people.
Yep. I think that's right. And that.
Yeah, I could not agree more with Mr. Robert. The Clintons, whatever you think of them, I mean, they are of that rich elitist capitalist system that made themselves rich. I mean, there can be a lot of good in them, but there's also a lot of positive, but there's also a lot of negative. I mean, just being honest, just being honest.
And that's, so by the time we get to, I think, Bush v. Gore, people are so depoliticized. It's the Big Chill. It's that sort of sense of like, what are we doing? We don't know. We're just going to ride out the sort of like the explosive economy.
This is so important. Like, this is really, we think about Mark Fisher, capitalist realism. When we talk about the 50-year counter-revolution, man, it was kids today. There was no left.
No, there was no. There was almost like just a total absence of politics. And then when 9/11 hit, we were so, as a society, so defenseless in terms of being able to respond to the panic and the militarism and the authoritarianism, frankly, that came out of the Bush, because there was no ideology, there was no movement, there was no left, there was no politics that existed. And I mean, I just remember, you know, I think probably I went to 3 or 4 different major anti-war protests in those years building up. And it was just so frustrating. And that, you know, there was a lot of people there. I mean, hundreds of thousands, I mean, massive protests. And it didn't make a difference. It was barely reported on the television. And there was a real feeling of isolation. And that's why, you know, just to bring it back to Janine, when she would go on television, like she became, you know, she was not she's a political person, you know, and particularly for that era, you know, a fairly, you know, a political person, but she became really important because she was the only voice that was speaking out against. Now, people I don't think realized that like nobody else was allowed to. Like literally she had to be recruited by this organization, Win Without War, because they could not get their experts on. They could not get their professors, they could not get their PhDs, they could not get their former military personnel. They couldn't get anybody on except for Janine, and then maybe Mike Farrell, who was from MASH, this CBS, you know, like, and this was the era that we were in. That so when Air America launched, it was a very, well, first of all, it was a very sort of like extraordinary, it was completely anomalous in terms of the time, and also it was scary. Like when Janine and I left our studios, we had bats because the amount of threats that she would get, that we would get as a station, but she would get as personally was just, I don't think people can fully, you know, sort of understand. And it was scary because no one cared. I mean, I just remember going to, during those first couple of years in 2004, 2005, I remember, you know, most of my friends I was still, you know, sort of like felt like I was still in the comedy world. I had, you know, literally, you know, in September of that year, I think I had to go out to LA because a TV show that I had made was airing on this network called Trio, which ultimately went away. It was a small network. But the point being that like I was still in that world well into Air America. And I can't even tell you the hostility that Janine and I got from our own people for doing that. Just because people were like, what are you doing? And it's so changed. The culture has so changed. Comedy, like they're so, it's so radically different. But I mean, I can tell you like my agents, my managers, like friends in the business, I would go to like some shows out there when I was visiting friends, and people were just like, and Janine's, you know, like people were like, is there any way you can get her not to do this anymore? And I'm like,
wow.
I do with it. I mean, it was
do you think,
really,
well, look, I don't, if you don't want to answer this question, that's fine. Do you think that her time on Air America hurt her career? I mean, she did Mystery Men after it.
No, I don't think she did it.
Was that before it?
I'm pretty sure that was before.
Oh, wow.
It was definitely before. I mean, it was during her anti-war stuff. I think there was a little bit, I think it made people a little bit nervous. And I think that in some respects, it probably did hurt her. Although like, I mean, I know that she lost some gigs, but I mean, could she recover from it? I mean, you know, it's so hard to sort of parse this stuff out, but without a doubt, there was certainly a hostility to what we were doing. And here's the difference between 2000, let's say 4 or 5, 6, and 2016, 2017. I remember just going to like out to dinner with friends, or maybe go to like 4 or 5, you know, like out to dinner with like 4 or 5, you know, 2 or 3 other couples.
Yeah.
And I would talk about this stuff, and I would try not to, but I was so immersed in it. And I would just start going like, you don't understand what's going on. You know, what's going on with the EPA, what's going on. I mean, the Bush administration was just horrible. It was just absolutely horrible. People would look at me like I was like a complete freak. They had no idea what I was talking about. And cut to 10, 12 years later, not exactly those same people, but more or less those same people are texting me shit about the Trump administration that I don't know. Like, it was a complete reversal in terms of the awareness of politics. It was just, I can't even tell you how isolating it was.
The extent of
4,
lack
5,
of
6.
politicization. Well, this is the thing. I want to go back to Air America. I used to listen to Air America regularly. I called in during Air America one time. This is going to blow people away. This is going to blow people away. These were considered the radicals because they were on Air America. Rachel Maddow. Rachel Maddow was considered radical.
Did she win a Pulitzer while she was? Didn't she win a Pulitzer?
No.
She never won a Pulitzer.
Rachel Maddow.
She may have won a Pulitzer, but not at Air America.
Not at Air America.
God rest he died. I used to like this guy a lot. Ed Schultz. Ed Schultz was a big deal. I called into Ed Schultz show.
He was not on Air America.
No, he wasn't on it, but he was a big radio. He was in the left constellation. Of radio. Ed Schultz was. But this is the people. Before MSNBC, I remember when MSNBC started. Before MSNBC started, right? They basically took a lot of Democrats who were kind of progressive Democrats, who were on left media. They got Rachel Maddow. They got Ed Schultz.
No, they get Al Franken?
No. You're going back. You're not going back far enough. When MSNBC started in 2004, the lineup was Scarborough, was Tucker Carlson. I mean, prior to that, it was Dan Abrams. It was not political. It was Pat Buchanan. The whole thing was right wing.
Yes.
And
I mean, even like, I remember, again, this is the news junkie in me coming out. I remember those early years of MSNBC before it was heavily conservative even back then. Most people wouldn't even know or remember that Tucker used to be on MSNBC. If you do, jog your memory, he was one of those bow tie wearing. He had the bow tie on during the Bush years, and I barely even noticed. So I guess I obviously missed something back then.
I mean, I would go on. Janine would get asked to go on Scarborough Country. It was on at like 10 p.m.
Scarborough Country.
She would say, "I'm not going on unless Sam comes on." That's like I say. I mean, you brought me on that way as a joke, but that's literally basically the story of my career in this world. And Tucker Carlson had a show on MSNBC.
Tucker Carlson had a show.
Pat Buchanan, I think, either had a show. At one point, they had Michael Savage. I mean, he was on, I think, like probably in the early aughts, and he didn't last too long. But that's Tucker. But MSNBC used to be right wing. They hired Keith Olbermann, and he, around 2005, just stumbled on being, sort of liberal. And then
something. What's that? Donahue was on MSNBC and he gets fired.
But that was in like the 2002, in the run up to the Iraq War.
Right, to run up to the Iraq War.
And you know who else was on there? Because I remember this. We used to do a phone call. What's that guy's name? No. The Grover Norquist had this famous like Wednesday breakfast or something. And so at Air America, we tried to do something like this because there was nothing. There was no left infrastructure or anything like this. And so we had like Al Franken sort of led these like phone calls with like some bloggers and this and that. And there was somebody that we had on who was from MSNBC, and like I would place her, probably to the right of anybody on the prime time of MSNBC now, like significantly to the right. But she was the leftmost person at MSNBC. She contributed.
You said something that's very important. People don't know the blogosphere was serious back then.
Oh yeah, no, that was it.
People don't understand. I got into blogging a little late. I started in 2007. People like Greenwald, people were blogging at salon. These guys literally
Duncan Black at Eschaton.
Yeah, they were people who just literally created a website. Joanne Reed was a journalist.
Says Joanne Reed. That's a big blog.
They started a website, started a blog site, and they started writing, and people picked them up.
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, Atrios got so big that they wrote him into
WordPress. It was like all this stuff that started to develop.
Jane Hampshire at Fire Dog Lake, and
Ta-Nehisi Coates also started as a blogger.
There was, I mean, it was a very big.
Say it again, Fire Dog. I was a part of Fire Dog. People don't realize Fire Dog Lake was a big deal. Listen, there is a book that needs to be written about the blogosphere of the early aughts, because I'll tell you right now, I have, like, before Obama, during the Bush years, there was a lot of good writing. Lot of good writing in the independent blogosphere. The blogosphere was the precursor to online left media.
Well, Pascal and Sam, let me ask you this question. What does that then say when we fast forward now, when the blogosphere has been replaced with 280 characters or less? What does that say about intellectual dishonesty when it comes to report, when it comes to news?
I would say, I mean, I think there's a big problem with, I mean, obviously, I'm on YouTube, but I've felt for a long time, particularly not even just Twitter, but YouTube and other, sort of, it's problematic insofar as that, like, on these blogs, things were a lot more static. So people would write, and then there was, like, the comment sections in some ways had parity with the blog post.
Yeah.
And it was much easier to, there was a lot more checks on a blogger at that time than there is, let's say, on YouTube. Because I can say something on my YouTube show and it can be total bullshit. And people can go into the chat, but the chat just spins so quickly, it goes away, and that's it. The YouTube will travel, the chat will stay there. But on blog posts, the comments and the scrutiny that you would get, if you were not good and you were not sound, let's just put it this way, you were not sound in terms of the arguments you were making, and you didn't have, proper links and whatnot, you would lose, you would be discredited over a certain period of time because of the nature of that.
You know what you're saying that's very important? Do you know what the thing about the blogosphere that was destroyed by social media? Because Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube got destroyed. There was a certain meritocracy to the blogging game. You wouldn't get picked up. You wouldn't get recognized unless your stuff was pretty good.
Right. And you had like a whole series of editors at that time. And it was static. I mean, that's the thing. I don't want to, people on the chat getting upset that I'm not dissing the people on the chat as much as I'm dissing the format, because it scrolls through and then it's gone. But these, the comments on a blog post had the essentially same ability to travel and get embedded as the actual post, that it was there. There was a parity between those who would hold the blogger to a certain level of scrutiny and accountability. And so it was a very different world. In fact, the first thing that I did when we got on the Majority Report is like, I want to get Atrios on, and I want to get Josh Marshall, and I think actually Bill Scher at the time. I don't, I have a slight divergence with Bill at this point, but at the time, and I was like, there's no way we're going to get him, because I bet you Franken's going to get it, and this and that, and they weren't aware of it. I mean, as old as I am now, I was basically the youngest person on Air America. I think maybe Rachel's a little bit younger, but she did not come on as she came on as a producer at first, and very quickly ended up, getting on the show with Liz and Chuck D. But she didn't.
Chuck D. I remember
Yeah,
Chuck D. Al Franken was he was.
Yeah, Franken did the noon to 3 show. Marin did the 9 to noon show. Then Randy Rhodes did 3 to 6, and then Janine and I would do 6 to 9. Then Mike Malloy, and that was the original lineup. And there was a no 9 to. I'm sorry, Marin did 6 to 9, and 9 to noon was Liz and Chuck D and Rachel Maddow, and that was the original lineup. And then you had people like Steve Earle, who had small, had weak.
I gotta say, I mean, not that bad a lineup at the time for a liberal talk radio network. And I only vaguely remember Air America, but like if you watch the documentary Left of the Dial, you'll see what I mean.
Weekend shows. I mean, there was really some amazing shows, and I mean, the lineup was good, and the ratings were actually pretty good. There was really bad management, frankly, 5 times over. You can watch that.
I watched the bounce checks, man.
Oh,
I watched the bounce checks. That was some like a level insight on the inner workings of that company, watching them tell everybody, hey, sorry, your money's just not here.
That was the first. I mean, I had multiple checks bounced, but at that point, I was coming out of show business. I had a lot of money. I didn't care. I mean, I wasn't going into this at that time to the money was completely secondary. But if you look at that movie and then you multiply that times 5 over the course of 6 years, you'll understand why Air America failed. Like literally there was 6 CEOs and 5 owners over the course of like 5 or 6 years. I mean, it was relentless. I mean, there probably should have been a book about it, but I will say this in terms of radio. Like, you started in your intro, which I thought was actually excellent, incidentally, Jason.
Thank you.
The question was, can what we do, on YouTube or as a podcast or Twitch or whatever, platform, compete with talk radio? And my answer is no. I don't. I mean, I think we serve a different function in many respects, but talk radio is ubiquitous. You still have so much reach, so much more reach with talk radio. I think it's completely underestimated in terms of what it does to our politics. Completely. I mean,
I think on the conservative side, that's true.
Yes. Yes.
The liberal side as well. I mean, look at Amy Goodman.
Amy Goodman is more people. I think more people watch Amy Goodman on digital platforms on YouTube now than listen to her on the radio.
I would say that radio, and she still comes on cable television.
But living in the heartland of America, Springfield, Missouri, like you live in small town America, and talk radio is critical to people's infrastructure here. Like they have their national. Like if you live in big cities where most people live, like perhaps talk radio isn't as big or as ubiquitous as you might think. But if you spread it across the country, particularly with regions with small populations but a lot of electoral power, it's like you get a lot of bang for your buck by having like these nationally syndicated radio hosts pumping people full of right-wing propaganda and a couple of local dudes who will complain that the Chamber of Commerce is run by communists, right? So, this is I think there's
I think it's completely underestimated. And what happens is you go from your car and all you're listening is you have 2 or 3 choices maybe of right-wing talk radio hosts. That's it, period. You go from your car, you go into the diner, and they're playing Fox there because CNN is maybe cleared in that market. MSNBC is not, and all there is Fox. Fox is on in the bar. It's in the diner. It's probably in when you're going to get your muffler fixed. Yeah. It's in the gym, and there is absolutely, I think, no awareness and no ability to stumble on anything that is even dissenting. Like, I don't even think that you need, my experience is such that you don't even need necessarily the right politics to be fighting, to be broadcast there. You just need a politics that's different so that people have an idea of, wait a second, there isn't unanimity about this. Like, they don't realize, people who live in these media areas have no way of realizing that they are hearing opinion news. They because they don't hear any other opinions that are broadcast in a mass market way, and they don't think that it's like they think they're listening to the weather. You know what I mean?
I think
he did a good job in Hate Inc. at explaining this phenomenon with the way news is shown. And I don't know if anybody watched the Alex Jones trial, but when it was coming out, when for his divorce, I think it was, and he was like, I don't do news. This is entertainment.
Yeah, people don't realize that how people get their news, especially if you come from, let's say, a more educated background from a more affluent part of the country, you don't realize there are huge swaths of, and this is not just in America, in Great Britain, people totally misjudged Brexit because they didn't think about what people in small towns that didn't who were getting news from like local Facebook groups were being fed with and things like that.
Well,
I think
look, guys, we went an hour right now, and Sam told us he couldn't join us for the bonus half.
I am sorry about that, ladies and
And,
gentlemen.
No problem. This is a great conversation. We should have a part 2 to this conversation.
We need to have
love
a part 2
I'd
to
love
this conversation.
I'm
And
big
if you're
fans
down
of
to
all
come
of
back,
your work, and I hope to have you guys back on Majority Report soon, as a crew or individuals, which I'm sure we'll do soon. But I am a big fan of what you guys do, so I really appreciate this.
Well, Sam, I want to say thank you again for always giving us a place to shine, I guess. I don't know what's the right word, Pascal, for platforming us.
Well, I mean, that's honestly, like, I'm happy to do it, but it's not my intention is more one, because I appreciate the work you guys do, and glad to sort of like I just enjoy. I've had great conversations with all of you.
The audience seems to like us as well, too, by the way.
They definitely do. Of course. Who wouldn't?
That's a good point.
There's a long list.
Pascal really reminds me of my dad when he says things like that, because my dad is one of these guys who is like, he's like, I'm humble, and it's like, I don't know, Dad, I don't know if you're that humble. He goes, I'm the most humble. That was
Well, we're still going. We're still going and going to do a bonus without Seder. We're probably going to talk about Seder and why he's trying to block Janine from talking to me, because I know that's fucked up, Sam.
We'll work on that. We'll work on that, definitely.
You gotta let her know. Say, Janine, there's this black dude in Mexico. He's got a beautiful house by the ocean. He wants to have you on the show.
That may not be the pitch I use.
I don't know how that's going to work with Janine.
That may not be the pitch I use. There you go.
All right. Well, thank
right,
you,
guys.
Sam. If you guys are patrons, we will see you in the after hours. If not patrons, it's easy. Patreon.com/BitterLake Join, and we're going to continue this conversation, because I had several questions for Sam. Didn't get to ask one.
Well, I'm sorry.
I'm going to email you those questions, and then you can reply back in written form.
Perfect.
And Pascal could read them.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
All right, we're back. Oh, I really enjoyed that. That was that was really, really something. I hope that the one viewer who watched it enjoyed it as well. You know, I know that I should be. It's 9 o'clock, and I'm gonna end the stream here in a few moments myself. So, I'll say this: if they watch this, if they see this now or later in the future, Jason, Pascal, Gene, and definitely Sam. I give hats off to you guys for inspiring me to do this. Be involved in the sort of, not really sort of, really into the left leaning news and politics, podcasting, streaming community. And I hope, and I'm trying, and I'm hoping to do the best that I can. And I hope that I hope that I make you guys proud. And I'm not saying that for, I'm not trying to say that to, inflate my own ego. I really mean that. But in any event, I really enjoyed that conversation. I'm glad that my first show back was watching that This Is Revolution episode, which I will say, please go, if you don't, please go and follow and subscribe to This Is Revolution on YouTube, on Twitch. Go follow them on all the social media platforms, and go friend Jason Miles on Facebook. He's great. He's wonderful. I used to mod for that show. I modded for it very briefly before I started this show. All right, as we are approaching not yet the 2 o'clock hour. Doesn't seem to be a lot of comments in chat except RC's hello. I hope that if you are watching, Charlie, thanks for sticking around. And hope you enjoyed the conversation. That last bit was funny. I hope that Jason gets to interview Janine, because that's something I would really want to. I'd want to see, because Janine's like a really, really funny comedian. And like I said in my little my little commentary piece, was that I remember, because my dad used to, I don't know if he still does now, but he used to watch Fox and Friends in the early mid-aughts or 2000s, as it would be said. But I say aughts like everyone else. I remember you could find the clip on YouTube of Janine Garofalo challenging Brian Kilmeade on the Bush administration's influence on so-called news network like Fox News. It's really interesting. It kind of takes a deja vu feel from the political events of today. But in any event, I haven't done this. I've been away for a while, so I can see if I remember to do this correctly. Catch the show Monday through Friday. Well, it is. We're 7 to 9. We're actually past 9 o'clock, so we've hit our mark on YouTube and Twitch. I still have a Substack. Read at TJRS.substack.com. I might even, watching this episode, I might do a little blog piece myself about Aram and my vague memory of it. Follow me on social media, Twitter at John Ross 1992. Facebook is John Ross. Twitch is Jonathan Ross, where this show is currently streaming. Patreon, to be quite honest, I may have to temporarily do away with that for now. I may have to temporarily do away with Patreon, so don't worry about that for now. What I will say at the end is like and subscribe if you enjoyed this show as much as you can, and enjoy the down tempo background music that is playing. If you will do so, likely if you're watching on YouTube now or later, to hit the like button and subscribe, the thumbs up. If you're watching on Twitch, I hope there's a subscribe button. Also, I forgot to mention, if you're watching on Facebook and Twitter, please hit the little heart and maybe the retweets and the share on Facebook. With that said, I am out of here. I will see you guys tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock. I can find the outro here, and I appreciate you all stepping away while I had to bite to eat because I hadn't had dinner. Let's see if I can find the outro. If I can, because I can do the outro. There is no outro. Hold on. Don't mind that. Do not. Let's see. Yeah. It used to be. Did they do away with it? Oh, well. Oh, there it is. It was staring me right in the face. So I will see you guys tomorrow, as always. Have a good evening. Left is best. Rest in power, Michael Brooks. Rest in power, Ed Asner. And I will see you tomorrow evening. Same time, same place. Peace.